Welcome to this week's Mindset video. This week I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the importance of talking. We've already shared a lot about how conversation with your child is such a key component of learning. When your child actively listens and communicates through words, their brain is firing in all sorts of places. Our brains are so intrinsically wired for communication. Even newborn babies, they found, have their brains pre-wired for this verbal communication and what comes with it, the eye contact that we make when we talk to someone, when we listen to a human voice. So our children are already pre-wired to be communicative and to enjoy that interaction and to learn so much from it. And you can harness that to not only create a really close learning relationship with your child, but also to just feed into them so much of what they need as far as vocabulary and understanding and laying that academic foundation for later learning. So much of that foundation is built around verbal communication, talking and listening. So let's dive a little bit further into that today. So we pull out the language and cognitive objectives every week, and instead of assigning you specific tasks, I talk to you about what we need to be covering, what we should try to focus on, and maybe give you some activity ideas to integrate that into your life. And the reason that we do that is because so much of them are not one and done activity-based things, and most of them, especially the language ones, but also the cognitive ones, involve a great deal of just communication with your child over the long term. It's not something that can really be accomplished in a week. This is something that needs to be done over time through a great deal of talking and listening to your child, letting their brains work on problems that they encounter and helping them to find solutions and different ways of problem solving, giving them the vocabulary that they need in order to communicate themselves. And so much of that is really our job to model that language and give them that vocabulary. They can only work with what they've been given, and so a huge part of teaching your child is to provide them with a very language-rich environment. And this means stretching and growing those language skills a little bit too. So let's talk a little bit more about some things that we as parents can do in order to provide that language-rich environment. So much of it comes from just paying attention to what we're doing ourselves. So modeling the correct pronunciation of words where possible, using complex sentence structure and proper grammar when we can. And nobody's perfect and does this all of the time, and in fact it would be exhausting to try to self-monitor constantly and make sure that every little thing we say is absolutely correct. I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting sort of a self-awareness, because I think that as parents a lot of times we have a tendency to simplify things for our children when we talk, either out of convenience and just getting a question answered quickly and so that we can move on, or maybe the child has interrupted us with something to ask us a question or to tell us something, and we're trying to kind of shortcut that and get back to doing what we were doing. And so it takes a lot of intention and a lot of self-awareness, and I know that I have a tendency to simplify things when I speak to my children, and I have to consciously stop myself and say, no, it's okay, you can use that big word. Because if you use that word and they don't understand what it means, then they'll ask, and then that's an opportunity for you to tell them what it means, to look up the definition. See, a lot of the times when my children put me on the spot, like, well, what does that word mean? Sometimes it's something so abstract, like we know how to use these words because we've heard them used so many times in context, but we're not exactly sure how to define it ourselves. So a lot of times I get put on the spot and I have to go to my phone and define words and try to think of like other examples of how to use them to explain it to my kids. And that is really what I mean by a rich language environment, one where you will take those chances to like stretch not only your child's vocabulary skills, but your own. And to, you know, when you are answering your child's questions and you catch yourself pausing for a second, trying to think of a word to explain something that you know they understand, think for a moment about just go ahead and using that grown-up word or that big word instead, and letting your child experience that new word in context. They may not ask you what it means. They may get a really good understanding of what that word means, even if they've never heard it before, from the context in which you use it. That's often how we, especially as adults, learn the meaning of new words, by hearing them in a certain context. And so over time, that's how your child will build vocabulary too. But they may say, well, what does that word mean? And put you on the spot to provide a definition or to look up one, and then you should do so. This really involves just a lot of that self-awareness and of taking a moment to say, okay, I don't have to put this in little kid speak. I don't have to baby talk to them. That's another thing we should try to be self-aware of, is to not use baby talk when possible, or not to model their pronunciation of words, as cute as it is. And I'm so guilty of this. Like, we have words in our family to this day that as adults say incorrectly because we've modeled how our children have said it when they were very young, because it's so cute and adorable. And that's totally fine. I think everyone does that to some extent, but we do have to be careful that, I mean, a great way to do it is if your child says something and pronounces it incorrectly, as adorable as it is to simply kind of repeat their sentence back to them, or rephrase it using the word and model the correct pronunciation for them. We don't want to make this something where we're constantly correcting what they say or making them feel like they've done something wrong, but at the same time, we want to provide that example to them of how we speak. And this is the correct pronunciation. Again, don't be afraid to use complex sentence structures. All of this is fantastic modeling for them. Children can understand, or they're capable of constantly understanding so far beyond what they can either read when they begin to read, or even their own verbal skills. They can understand much more than their vocabulary can access themselves. So when your child speaks, they have a vocabulary that's this big, but what they can actually understand when you talk is way larger than that. So don't be afraid to feed that machine of words, and slowly their spoken vocabulary will grow as well. Another important part of modeling language for them is to model the opposite side of this, which is to model good listening skills. And this is one, I think, that is maybe the most challenging as a parent, because whether you've been interrupted from an important task, or whether you're sort of being treated to a 10-minute discussion of their favorite cartoon character, or whatever the case may be, sometimes it's very hard to keep our attention on what our little children are saying to us. But it's critically important. Your child is choosing to come and share these things with you because this topic is important to your child and you are important to them. And so in honor of that, we need to really try to focus our attention on that moment and to model what good listening skills are, in the same way that we would want our children to pay attention when we're trying to tell them something important. So that putting down of whatever it is that you're in the middle of and focusing your attention on them, and eye contact and all of those nonverbal, nodding your head and being good active listeners, asking curious questions about what it is that they're saying to you, to model those listening skills, paraphrasing what they say so that they know that you've heard them and that you're listening to them. Or if you can't at that second, if you're on an important phone call and they come up and they start talking to you, to not dismiss them or act like you're listening when you're not, but to say, just a moment, I know that what you want to say to me is very important, and so I want to make sure that I can listen. Let me finish my phone call, and then we will come back to this. And so just as you would treat another adult in conversation, or the behavior that you would expect from them when they're listening to you, that's what you want to try to model for them, and that gives them the opportunity to be the speaker. So of course, they're only really going to engage in extended communication on topics that are of interest to them. And so This is also a wonderful opportunity for you to really learn more about your child. And this is super helpful, not just in building a close relationship with your child, but you'll be able to use that information to your advantage as you progress through helping them learn, whether you're homeschooling them, whether you're just helping them with their homework when they come home from school. If you understand your child's, the inner workings of their mind, their learning styles, what engages them, what their topics are they interested in, what are they passionate about, if you really understand what makes them tick, then you're going to be able to harness that information and use it to help them learn later. And really the only way to get to know them on that level is to really listen to them when they talk. And so it's another fantastic opportunity to do that. It will be useful information to you, both in the short term and in the long term, as you assist them in their learning process. It also gives them a lot of social, emotional experience too. That's one of the things that we've been learning about, is how to express your emotions and how to tell what emotions another person is feeling. And we do that verbally and non-verbally. And so a lot of this conversation and listening is also social emotional practice, which will benefit them not just as they go to kindergarten and interact with teachers and other children, but for the rest of their lives. So you're the one setting that stage for how they relate to other people. So being able to talk freely, talk about how they feel and have their emotions validated, and to be able to listen to another person talk about their feelings and share empathy with them, or to ask them, sensitive questions about what it is that they're experiencing. Those types of interactions, that's also a huge chunk of social emotional learning. And so it's an opportunity to expand in that realm as well. They learn other social conventions and rules, such as not interrupting, taking turns when talking, staying on topic, asking those appropriate follow-up questions in a conversation. All of those little social conventions, you're helping them practice those skills. So they go out into the world and they interact with other people. They have confidence and they have experience doing those types of things. So conversation with your child, modeling both the speaking end and the listening end, it helps them learn in so many different areas. And so many of our different objectives that we're looking at for language and cognitive skills: asking and answering questions, categorizing objects, describing objects. All of these things involve vocabulary and words. So much of math, what I tell parents is that foundational math skills are so about vocabulary and just understanding the words that we're going to use for math. That's such a huge part of foundational math skills. And so all of these are, conversation is far more of an opportunity to work on all of the subjects, not just the language subject. So I hope that you've gotten some renewed enthusiasm for engaging in deep conversations with your kids, and maybe it helps to have a little bit more patience in those trying times when we want to just hurry up and answer their question and move on, to take a moment, self-inventory, and take a little bit of extra time, 30 more seconds, to have a little bit more deep and involved conversation with your child, and what both sides are really going to gain from that experience.